Hey, this is Andy from Glide, and welcome to my first screencast showing you how to build a custom IT help desk in under an hour. I actually got my career started with IT. It was like the first main role I had coming out of college. And one of the things I worked on was building these custom solutions for our help desk team. One thing I really learned from that time is that these beefy IT help desk systems, well, they're beefy because they need to do a lot. They need to serve a bunch of different use cases. So what we can do is we can build something a little bit leaner, and we can do it pretty quickly. And that's what we're going to set out to do today in Glide. All right. So first things first, this is a brand new app. If you've never seen the Glide Builder before, welcome. This is the Glide Builder. And up along the top here, we have the three main sections that we're going to be working with today. We have our data editor, the layout editor, and the actions editor. Now, when you build a Glide app for the first time, Glide loads in a bunch of sample data for you. And also loads in some sample screens. So here on the layout editor, I see I created a new app. I'm on the large screen view here, but I can also toggle between mobile and large display. I can go full screen if I want to, which is pretty awesome. But I don't need these things right now, right? Like, this is sample data, don't need it. So I'm just going to go over here and wipe those out. And then I'm going to go over here to the data editor. So I'm going to delete these two tables here, these two sample tables. Don't need them. Let's wipe those out. And we're going to leave the users table alone because we're going to work with that in a minute. So let's go and create a new table. I'm going to call this tickets. And this table is going to store all of the help desk ticket information that we're going to get from our help desk users. All right. So next thing I'm going to do over here on the right hand side, I'm going to add a new column, and I'm going to turn on row ID. Now, row IDs are pretty important. If you're familiar with relational databases, you're familiar with SQL, row IDs are your unique key. They're unique to every row in your table. So even if the other values change in your other columns, this row ID is never going to change. I'm going to rename the name column to ticket underscore title. And I'm going to add a few more columns here. We have ticket title. We're going to do ticket status. And this is a text column. Do another column here, ticket underscore category. And what I'm doing right now is I'm setting up the structure for my data table, my database. And there's no official naming protocol for table columns in Glide, but I find that when you have a convention like this, it's really helpful later on, especially when you're building more complex apps, because the column header is what you're going to be looking at when you're building out your layout. So when you have something that is easy to refer to, where just at a glance you know what the table is, you know what the value is, and what table it's in just by looking at the column name, I find that really, really helpful. I'm going to add another column here called ticket timestamp, but it's not going to be a text column. Instead, I'm going to go down here under basic. I'm going to choose date and time. I'm going to leave the defaults here. And what that's going to be is that's going to store the date and time in a structured format, and we're going to reference that later on. Okay, so we have our tickets table now, right? That's all set up. Let's create another table here. I'm going to call this table options. What we're doing here is we are going to provide options that our layout is going to pull from. So when we start building out these menus, the drop down select menus, we're going to pull from the options table. So let's add categories as a column. Let's rename this name one to ticket underscore status. And then we'll add another one here called user roles, and another one called user department. Nice. Okay, so for ticket categories, copy and paste our values in here. So we have different categories for our help desk tickets. And then for ticket status, pop these in here. User roles, we're only going to have three: admin, agent, and employee, and then user department. Great. I'm going to shuffle these things around a little bit. All right. So now we have our ticket categories. So these are the categories that our help desk tickets will fall into. We have ticket status, right? We have the user department for our help desk users, and then we have user roles. Yes. Okay. All right. Now, after that, we have the users table. Now, the users table is created by default for every new Glide app. You're going to get the users table. And what's special about this is that the users table manages the access and the permissions of your app. So by default, you get these four columns. We have name, email, photo, and role. And we're going to add a couple more here for our users. We're going to add department, and we're going to add desk underscore. All right. So now we have our tickets, our options, and our users. Using the magic of the internet, I'm going to drop in some sample data here. Let me grab that. All right, magic of the internet. We copied and pasted our data over. So we have our sample data now copied and pasted over into Glide. You can see here I have a bunch of names of our users. We have the emails and roles and the departments. And then for users within the IT department, we have these help desk groups. These are going to be important later. Something else that you may have noticed is here on the email column. Let me zoom in so you can see. Here on the email column, we have this little silhouette of a person. And this refers to the row owner column. So a row owner column, what it does is it checks for an email address in that column and then says whatever user corresponds to this email address, they will be the only one to access the information within that row. And you can see a little bit of that visibility here. So my row is highlighted versus these are all faded out a little bit. But if I switch over to Alma, that highlight shifts. This is important for public apps. If you have different people coming into your Glide app and there's sensitive information stored in the users table, you don't want those individuals to be able to access information from other users. Now, that said, this is on internal apps. So we don't have to worry about that as much because we actually do want our users to be able to access information about other users in this table. So I'm going to turn this off. How do I do that? Well, up in the header here, I'm just going to expand that menu, hit remove row owner. The table is going to refresh, and there we are. I'm going to remove my personal user from this table. Highlighting that, hitting delete on the keyboard, hitting delete, wipes it out. I'm going to view this app as Alma, who's our admin user here. You can see that in the admin role. I'm going to be building this app out as if I were Alma. So I'll be viewing as Alma. This is a nice thing about Glide. As you're interacting with the builder, the Glide builder here, you can switch between users at any time to see what they see. So here in the data editor, I'm viewing this data as Alma. Great. Okay, so backing up, we have our ticket data table, we have our options, and we have our users. Great. Let's switch over to the layout. Now, I'm of a very strong opinion that all Glide apps should start with data. So that's what we did. We started with data. Now we're going to create our layouts based on that data. So we're going to create a new screen. And there are many different options to choose from when you're creating a new screen in Glide. But what I want to use is the custom screen. It's like a blank canvas. I'm going to set the source for this screen to tickets, and I'm going to change the label to all tickets. And I can also change the icon here to something a little bit more relevant. So let's do that. And there we go. And I'm going to change the style here to list. There we go. And then when I added the list style here, you'll see over on the left hand side we got this collections component that was added, and I can click that to configure the settings for this screen and for that component. Those show up over here on the right hand side. This is your configuration panel over here. So I'm going to add a new ticket. So I click add new, and what we get here is the add new ticket screen, which is actually a form. So the screen here is a form, and all of these components along the left side here, these are all fields. And we can click on, remember what I said, we can click on a component to edit its properties. We can configure it over here on the side. So let's clean this screen up. Starting from the top and working our way down, starting with ticket title, I am going to change the label of this to subject. And that just changes the label on the form. It doesn't actually change the header in the data. That's still set to ticket title. So we're writing to the ticket title column here. And I'm going to mark this as required. Ticket status, I'm going to remove because we actually want to set this automatically when someone creates a ticket. So we're going to pull that out. We're also going to remove ticket category because what we want to do is we want to add that through a choice component. So earlier on, I mentioned that we will take those options we added to the options table over here. Remember these. We're going to take these and pull them in through a choice component. So I'm going to add a new component. It's going to be a choice component. Okay. So added a choice component. It's going to write to ticket category. The source is going to be options, and the values will be ticket categories. Default value, we're going to set user support, and we are going to mark this as required. And we're going to change that label to category. Ticket author, we don't need. We're going to set that automatically. Ticket timestamp, we don't need. We're going to set that automatically as well. For ticket description, we're going to write to ticket description, but we're going to change the label. And we're going to say here, describe your issue. We're going to make this large because we want to have more information here. And we're going to mark it as required. Great. So we've simplified this quite a bit. Now I'm going to go up to the form settings here. I'm going to change this from add item. So form options, change this to new. So let's submit a test ticket here. So we have these entries that have been submitted, and I can go into a detailed view here. And this is going to show us information about the ticket. So I have breadcrumbs, ticket title, and then the fields here. Over on the right-hand side under configuration, I can add some options. We're going to come back and tidy this up later. So for now, we'll just leave it as some samples. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to wrap this in a container component. So the container component is actually one of my favorites. It's really powerful because it gives you just the right amount of control over the look and feel of your screens. So I'm going to take my fields component here, and in the component tree, I'm going to drag that up into the container. Then on the container, I'm going to change the background on this to card. So you get this nice little tidy border around the component. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to add a rich text component right here in the container. And I'm going to put that underneath the fields. And here we can see some placeholder text. So the rich text component actually supports Markdown. So if you wanted to, you can put Markdown in here that I'll display on the page, or you can pull data, of course, from your pull values from your data table. So here I'm going to pull the ticket description. So now we have the fields and we have the rich text pulling in some details about our ticket. Great. Okay, now let's get a headline component in here. So it's another text component. I'm going to put that up above the fields. And I'm going to change this to say ticket details. And I'm going to change the style to meta text. And I want to do this again. What I'm doing here is I'm duplicating the headline component. Just mouse over it, hit duplicate item, and we'll get a nice little clone of that component. And I'm going to change this. So we have our title, we have our category, we have our description. So let's go back to the main screen here. Here I am on the main screen. So I'm going to go to the collections component, and under meta, right over here for items data, I'm going to change the meta to ticket category. And I'm going to change the image to from URL. Now, when I do that, I change it to from URL and I leave it blank. What happens is Glide removes that placeholder image from the layout. And here we can see the description is set to ticket status. On that first test submission I made, status was one of the fields that I included, and I put in a value. If you remember that, put in the value. That's why it's in the data source, and why it's not showing up for the others, because I removed it as we were building that layout. And if we come down here, so just to show you what this looks like, we have this data panel. What the data panel does is it shows you the data for whatever screen or component you're currently working with. So here I get a little preview of this data that's showing in the layout. I can see it down here in the data panel. So I have my row IDs, I have the ticket titles, the status, category, description, but we are missing some data over here. We don't have the author, we don't have the timestamp. We shouldn't have the status. That shouldn't be set, because what we want to do is we actually want to set these values automatically when the ticket is submitted. We don't want the user to have to enter that manually. We want to set it automatically. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to do that with a custom action workflow. So let's hop over here to the actions editor. Now, the actions editor is a very powerful part of Glide. And one of the things that I love about it is that not only can you build these custom workflows, but you can also tie your app to other services and tools using all these amazing integrations that we have. Now, for this particular build, I'm not using any integrations, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so let's create a new action. And this is going to be for what happens when someone creates and submits a ticket. So I'm going to rename this thing to submit ticket. Double checking here that this happens when there is a user interaction with tickets. Now, the first action that we want to happen is to set the column values. So what we're doing is we want to set the values over here. We want to set these values: status, author, timestamp. We want to set these automatically when the ticket is submitted. So user interaction with tickets, we're going to change this to data, set column values. We're going to keep it set to this row, and I'm not going to mess with any of the other values. Those are going to be set already when the ticket is submitted by what the user puts in. So I'm just going to look at these other values that aren't being set. So ticket status, this is where we're going to set it to new. Ticket author, we're going to change this to user profile, email, and then ticket timestamp, we're going to set to current date and time. So what's happening here is that when a user creates a new ticket for that item that they're submitting, we want to set the ticket status to new, the ticket author to pull the email address from the user's profile. So whatever active user is using the app, we want to pull their email address in and set it to ticket author. And then the ticket timestamp is going to be set to the current date and time whenever the user is submitting that ticket. So that's the first one. Now we're going to add another action here, because what we want to do is take the user to that ticket that they just created after they submit it. So we're going to do navigation, show detail screen for this item. And we're going to set this to target main. So it's going to be the main screen that opens up after they submit the ticket. Cool. So we have that set. Let's go over back to layout, and let's go back to add an item. So I'm previewing this in mobile now, but we have that new ticket screen that opens up. right? We have our subject, category, description. Now, what I want to do here is on this form. So I'm in the configuration settings for this form, this screen. I'm going to go to on submit. We're going to go to actions for ticket. And this goes to our custom action workflow that we just created. I'm going to choose submit ticket. There we go. Yay. So let's try this now. So let's switch to a different user. I'm going to switch over to employee Sarah, and I'm going to say can't connect my monitor. The cable provided for my monitor doesn't fit fit into my laptop. And someone and let's look at the data for this. So we have now what we have is our ticket title, the status set to new, the category of user support, the description that we filled in, the ticket author set to Sarah, right? And then the ticket timestamp. So these values are now being set automatically. Great. So this ticket has come in, but wouldn't it be great if we could automatically assign this ticket to the right person based on the category? Because if you remember, when we set up the users table for all of the users within the IT department, they have a help desk group assigned. And these help desk groups correspond to the ticket categories. So wouldn't it be great if we could just automatically assign these tickets based on that relationship? So that's what we're going to do. It's a little bit of database magic using relations. So let's go over to the tickets table here. And next to the ticket category column, we're going to add another column called ticket category bell. And we're going to make this a relation column, which is one of the computed columns that we have. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check that the value in ticket category matches the value in our users table of the help desk group. So now we have this rel column off of ticket category. Now we see the names of the users corresponding to these categories. So that relation column checks ticket category and says, hey, over in the users column, do we have users that match the help desk group where the value is the same? Ticket category to help desk group. And if so, let's get those names in here. Now, the thing is, we can't use this column directly within our layout. Can't pull those values because all this column is doing is it's saying, let's get the row, pull that in here. And now we can add new columns to build on top of this rel column. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add a new column to the side here. Call this ticket. Uh, ticket underscore assigned. And this is going to be a lookup column. And for the relation column, we're going to choose that ticket category rel that we created. And we're going to pull the value of name. Now, this column we can use in our layout. Ticket underscore assigned is pulling the value of the name from this relation. Now, let's do that again with our author, because right now we have the email address. That's great, but let's do something a little bit more useful. So I'm going to create another relation column here, computed relation, and we're going to look up ticket author matches the value in users email. There we go. So I submitted these test tickets before we had the action in place, right? So there's no match because we don't have an email address for those rows. But for this one, where we did set the email value, Glide knows, hey, this is Sarah Simon. But again, we can't use the relation column in the layout, so we're going to add another column, author name. It's going to be a lookup. And the relation column will be ticket author rel, and we're grabbing the name, and there's a value that we can use in our layout. Great. So let's go back to the layout editor. And here we are. We have our tickets. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to tidy up the fields. So let's do this. We want to display the ticket status. We're going to give it a nicer label here, status. We want the name of the ticket author. I'm going to get ticket author name. We want the timestamp. Great. We also want the category. And we want who it's assigned to. There we go. Now this looks a little bit better. We have some more useful information in here. So now that we have that, let's go back to the main ticket screen and switch between a few more users to see what this looks like. So let's add another ticket here. Okay, I just cleaned up the submitted tickets a little bit. So let's go into one of these. This is great. So we have the ticket coming in, we have the status, who created it, the category, assignment based on that category. That's all great. We've got the timestamp. But what if you want to change the information on the ticket? So if I go over here to title, we have this action called show edit screen. Open that up. I'm going to change the target to slide in. So we get this nice little panel that opens up on the side, just the same as if we were adding a new ticket. So we have that same interaction happening. Now let's clean this up. We're missing some information here. So for text entry, we have the title here, the label of name. I'm going to mark this as required. I'm going to add another component here, choice component. We're going to add several choice components. Now this choice component we're going to use for the author. So I'm going to change the right to author. The source is going to come from users, and the value is going to be email. And we're going to display it as name. So why the value of email? Here's why. If you look at the data and you look at our tickets, the value stored in ticket author is the email address, right? That's what we're storing in the data. So that's the value that we're going to set here. But the name, what we want to see show up in the actual menu is the name. So we're setting that for the display as. For the label, let's change this to created by, so it's consistent with what we see on the detail screen. And we're going to make that required. Okay, let's do that again. Add choice component. And this is going to write to ticket category. The source will be options, and the values will be ticket categories and displaying as ticket categories. Now you'll notice that as I'm adding these components, adding these fields and configuring them, it's automatically pulling the values for this ticket. It's pulling in the values automatically as I'm building the layout. And that's a handy little way for us to know that we are configuring things properly because it should be consistent with what we see on the detail screen. I'm going to make this required as well. Next, I'm going to add another choice component. This one is going to go to ticket status. We're going to pull the value for this list from options. The values will be ticket status, display as ticket status, change the label, status. And we'll make this required too. I'm going to move this up under the name. Finally, we are going to add a text entry component. It's going to write to ticket description. And the label, I'll change it to description. And the size to large, and we're going to mark it as required. So now, if we look at any one of these tickets, we can open up the edit ticket screen and see the information. Now, there is a little bit of a problem here. At the moment, every user can see every ticket, and every user can edit every ticket. What we want is for this to these tickets to only be editable by agents, by admins, or by the user, the employee who created the ticket. So, how are we going to do that? Well, we do that by adding some conditions to our edit action. So, here on the ticket title component, you can see here in the configuration, if I go down to actions, I can add a condition to this action. So, I will allow this action when the user profile's role is not employee, or I'll show it if the user's email matches the ticket author. So what I'm doing with this conditional check is saying I only want this edit item, all right, this edit action to be available if someone is an agent or an admin, or they are the author of the ticket. So if I were to change my user to Sarah, the edit action reappears. If I view it as an agent, edit action is available, or as an admin, it's available. But if I'm any other employee, the edit action disappears. Okay. Let's keep going. So let's create a couple conditional views here. So help desk agents and admins should be able to see all the tickets, but employees should only be able to see the tickets that they've created. There's multiple approaches that you could take to filter out what you see on a screen. The approach that I'm going to take for this build is we are going to do another conditional check, but this time we are going to do it in the data. So going back to the data editor here, over on the right-hand side, I'm going to add another column. And let's call this one ticket underscore mine. And we're going to make this an if then else column, which is a conditional. So the first case that I'm going to set here is that if the ticket author, if that matches the user profile's email, then I'm going to set the value to true. Or if the ticket underscore assigned is the same as the user profile's name, I'll set this to true. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it blank. Click save. So let's switch over to one of our agents here. So Ivan here has a ticket assigned to him. And there we have it enabled. I can also switch over to Ryan, and we see that ticket mine value changes. So now it's enabled here. So what we can do now on the layout is we can duplicate this all ticket screen. And I'm going to change the label to my tickets. I'll move that up here. So now my tickets are first and all tickets are second. Now on all tickets, what I want to do is hide the all tickets screen from users, basically hide it from employees. So on the visibility condition here, I'm going to say show this tab when the user profile's role is not employee. So now if I switch over to, let's say, Alan doesn't see that screen. Alan just has his my tickets view. Now on my tickets, on that collection, I'm going to add a filter data option here that says ticket underscore mine is checked. So if you look at our tickets, Christina Wallace here, that's her ticket. And it's assigned to Hugo. It's also showing there. And then all tickets is only visible to the agents and admins. All right, we've done a lot so far. So we have our tickets screen, we have our all ticket screen, we have our my ticket screen. All tickets pulls from the tickets table. In that table, we can see we have the ticket title, the status, the category. Based on the category, we're doing an assignment through the rel column, and we pull the name of the assigned agent. We have our descriptions, the name, the email addresses of the author. We're doing another relation column, check against that value, and pulling the author's name, the ticket creator's name, and we're adding the timestamp. This is great. And if we go into a ticket, the tickets are only editable by admins, agents, and the individual who created the original ticket. Now, there's something else that we need to do. We're missing the ability to leave comments on a ticket, and that's vital because the comments are how agents are going to communicate with employees. So let's go into a ticket here. And what we want to do is add comments at the detail level. Before we do that, though, we need to set up the data for where we're going to store the ticket comments. So back to the data editor. I'm going to create a new table here called, I'm going to add the row ID column, and I'm going to add a bunch of a bunch of additional columns. So we'll rename the name column to comment underscore text. We'll add a text column called comment ticket ID. We'll add another one called comment author. Add comment author name. And we're going to add a date and time column called comment underscore timestamp. And we will enable seconds on this one. And then we'll add an image column called comment author image. Over here in the layout, going to add a comments component at the bottom here. I can just search for that. On the side, the source will be ticket comments. Text will be comment text. Timestamp will be comment timestamp. Author photo, comment author image. Author name will be comment author name. Under save data, comment ticket ID is going to be the row ID. Comment author is going to be the app's user email, which is the same as choosing user profile's email. Comment author name, the user profile name. Comment timestamp will be current date time. And comment author image will be user profile photo. You can leave the rest as is. And down here, we're going to remove the after submit action because the comments will appear on screen, and that is enough of an indicator that a comment was left. Now we're going to go over to the options tab, and we're going to change filter data so that comment ticket ID is the same as the row ID for this current screen. And if we don't do that, the comments component is going to load all the comments from all the tickets. We just want to see the comments for this ticket. And then we're going to change the sort from sheet order so that the most recent comment is at the top. So I'm going to switch my user here to Fatima and leave a comment to test. Hi, Ryan. Thank you for letting us know. Are you using Mac or Windows? Let's change that. Would you prefer Mac or Windows? You can leave some comments here to test. I'll switch over to Ryan. So that happened because I was going through the all ticket screen. I should have gone through the my ticket screen for Ryan because Ryan can't access the all ticket screen. There we go. So now for Ryan, Ryan has a ticket here. You can see the comments, ticket details. I'm switching over to Fatima. You can also see it here because it's assigned to them. And change the status to working on. And just for funsies, why not at this point? We're in all tickets. I'm going to group this by ticket status. All right. Let's do the same for my tickets. Okay. And since we're grouping by status, we don't need to see the status into the description when we pull in the ticket timestamp. There we go. Okay, so we have a my ticket screen with tickets that are either assigned to or created by the active user. We have an all ticket screen for agents and admins. There's one last screen I'd like to add, and that is for documentation. And the reason for that is it's just a good idea to have some kind of documentation, a reference for your users. Tells them how to use the app. It could be used to communicate things like recent updates, changes, bug fixes, that sort of stuff. And it's really easy to add that to your app. So over here under navigation, I'm going to create another custom screen. And then here, using a combination of containers and rich text, I can put that documentation in line. And you can do whatever you want with this screen. Let's change the label here to docs and make a more appropriate icon. Now I can take this, I'll put it under menu. And why do I put it under menu? Because when a page or a screen is under the menu heading on a large display, this will show up in the navigation menu. But when you're on mobile, it's going to appear in that side panel menu. And so here, looking at our app as an admin, or sorry, as an agent, I have my tickets and I have all tickets. And sure, why don't we also add the ability to filter this by status. So we're just about ready to publish. So let's head over to settings here and start from the top and work our way down. So for name and icon, we can change this to whatever we want. You can upload a logo for your app that'll appear in the layout up here. You can also upload a custom icon for your app. If you don't have one, you can choose an emoji. Down under appearance, one of the nice things about Glide is that as you tweak the colors and the layout, everything cascades. So you only need to make your changes here once, and all of the components, all of the screens will automatically inherit that styling. You may have noticed as we're adding components to the screen that you do have the ability. So let's go in here and say on this container, you have the ability to define a custom CSS class. Well, in these settings under appearance, you can write some custom CSS to target those classes. And you can actually preview that CSS directly in the builder here. For privacy, we are sticking with the defaults, but I want to show you anyway. This is a private app, so only users that you've granted permission to can access it. And we're looking at the users table for that list of users. You can set it to other things as well. You could set it to the Glide team. So whatever users you have in your Glide team, they can access the app. It could be based on domain. You can define a set password for the app, or you can check for all emails in the table. You could even enable single sign-on for your organization's auth provider. Integrations, we're not using any integrations in this app, but if you have integrations enabled, you can configure them here. For users and authentications, by default, Glide doesn't store any passwords in your app. Users log in by requesting a PIN and then authenticating in with that. You can also enable the option to send a magic sign-in link. So any user, when they go to log in, they get the email with the PIN. They can also just click that link to log into the app. You can enable sign in with Google if your organization uses Google or you want to let users log in with their Google account. Their email address still needs to be in that users table for them to authenticate in. Same thing with single sign-on, as I mentioned. You can use your organization's auth provider to allow logging into your app. We're going to turn off access requests for this app. But that is an option as well to allow users to request access to your app. Then for sign-in screen, you can do some customizations here. You can upload a custom logo, custom background. For the rest of the stuff here, I don't need to worry about it. The defaults are fine. This is an internal app, so we're all good to go. So I'm going to go up here and hit publish. I do have a chance to change the app link, that little subdomain here, that little app link. I can change that now, or I can change it after I publish the app. So I'm going to hit publish, and Glide automatically generates a QR code for me. So I can use this QR code to give people the link. I can also change the link here. If I do that, the QR code will change. So keep that in mind. If you change the link to your app, you'll need to use a new QR code. I can send invites to my users directly from here. I can also adjust the privacy settings from within this panel. And over on publishing, by default, Glide will automatically push out any changes you make to your app. So as you're making changes to your components, to your screens, to your data, those will automatically go live for your users. If you would rather not do that, you can enable manual publishing, which means you can make changes in the builder, preview it here live, and then when you're ready, you can hit publish to push those changes to your users. You can also unpublish your app from the publishing settings here. And last but not least, domain. So you do get the app link from Glide. This is provided by Glide, but you can customize the domain as well. And what we've seen folks do is either use a custom subdomain, so like app.company.com, or they'll use a custom like a .app TLD. So it could be like company.app. Totally up to you. We'll give you the instructions on how to configure your domain to point at your app. And the last thing here that I want to call out is that after you publish your app, that publish button disappears. It becomes the share button. Click that to open up this panel, and you can get to all the things that I just showed you. So there's a lot more that we could have done with this app. We could have added AI. We could have added more integrations, done a bunch of great stuff with user experience notifications. And that's one of the fun things about working with Glide is that there is so much that you can do, and the results are so immediate that it's tempting to just keep going. That said, though, we are out of time, so we're going to stop it here. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are putting out more great tutorials, screencasts, we're hosting live streams and events. You don't want to miss any of it, so hit subscribe. And if there's anything else that you'd like us to cover in a future build, please leave your request down in the comments below, and we will add it to our list. You can also check out the Glide Community Forum for more inspiration, advice, and answers from our ever-growing community of Glide experts and users. I'm Andy at Glide. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.